Rabbi Mordechai Yosef here. Something really interesting happened over Shabbat. So, as you know, like I've been learning a lot of around the 6 days of creation, and so I decided to look in the Zohar, and I ran across this amazing story and a set of teachings after that story that led me to the next book that I'm going to write, and come out in the world. And it's all based around the 6 days of creation, but it's the lessons that we can learn about reality and life from what is expressed inside of the Torah. Everything from the first word of the Torah all the way to Shabbat, in the day that Hashem ceased to create. From that whole process, we can learn a tremendous amount of information. But what even makes it more amazing, because of course we could read the Chumash and we could get this information out of it, or we could get aspects of great lessons, but we get to learn from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? The author of the Zohar, the Tana, Rabbi Kiva's student, like this humongous person, right? So there's a story that I ran across on Shabbat. So I'm in the whole Zohar. And by the way, just for the people who don't know, I want to just say, so how did I even get these Zohars, right? I went to normal yeshiva, learn Gemara, 7 hours a day for 5 years, and I did stumble upon a kollel. Well, I didn't so much stumble upon it. I have friends that were already learning there, but it was a Kabbalistic kollel in the old city, right? And from in that kollel, I learned how to, interpret text, but I didn't go there really for that reason. I went because I have friends there, and I just got married, and I wanted to have a seder for Elul, right? I wanted to have a seder for Elul, and so I started to go to this shir that a friend of mine. Anyway, turned into this whole thing. I was there for almost a year, and I learned there every day. I ended up even giving shir there. I had an evening shir there, but we learned how to translate text, right? And translate it not necessarily from a grammatic standpoint, but from a structural standpoint, meaning the structures of the words and the structures of the text and how they do it. So I had that experience, right? And so it was nice. It was growing. It was a sneaker program there. It was the whole thing, right? And so the thing is to say that, so I did that, right? And so anyways, I got involved in other things, and I wasn't able to, be so much involved in that program, but I was there for a while. And so as I moved on and started working with other organizations, and learning with different people, I, was randomly on my birthday, I decided, actually it wasn't even my birthday, I wanted to go to Hebron to have a Shabbat there, right? And I wanted to go, and I had it in my mind to go, and I met this guy, and they were trying to set it up, whatever, and I just never did, I didn't follow through with it. I just didn't feel like following through with it. And I had this intuition, weeks later to do it, realizing that my birthday was coming up. And now I wanted to go even more so because, we know there's four holy cities of Jerusalem. We have, and this isn't the shir, this is just the introduction. We have Tiberias, which is is known as a place for water. It represents the influence of water in the world. You have Sfat, which represents the influence of air. You have Jerusalem, where I'm at right now, which represents the influence of fire. And you have and then you have Hebron, which represents earth. And so I was born in Elul, and Elul is an earth sign. So I thought going to Hebron for my birthday on Shabbat would be really powerful, right? So Baruch Hashem ended up happening. Me and my wife went, and it was amazing. Shabbat in Hebron is a whole nother reality. It was It was like going to like the Kotel on a Friday night. It's like packed and there's kids there and everyone's running around. And maybe the particular week we there was like a seminary week, who knows? It was like, before Rosh Hashanah, a couple weeks before Rosh Hashanah. And so we were there. And so long story short, when we were at our meal that night, we were having a conversation and everyone was talking about their stories. And, I was talking about my story and they were talking about their story. And, my story, a lot of people know, has a lot to do with coming through the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles. And I was there for like several years before I ever thought about fully going through an Orthodox conversion. And a lot of that influenced me, and the people I learned underneath there. And, I wasn't Jewish then, so I couldn't really retain, the information as I maybe would have been if I was there now. But either way, at that stage of my life, it was something good. It's not something I would do now. I'm not in that place. It's not like a place for me to be at as a kosher Jew or be associated with, but this is part of my journey, right? And so, I was talking about it, and it so happens that one of the, people that was sitting there at the table was a guest, and this particular guest, was a young lady, and she was staying, she's not even from Kiryat Arba, because that's in essence the area, Kiryat Arba. She wasn't from Kiryat Arba, that area, she was actually from Jerusalem, and she was there eating with us. And so her and my wife, kind of became friends, they talked, and it was whatever. And so the next day, we have lunch, right? And so that girl comes back, she comes back, she's there for, for the meal, for, daytime. We stayed overnight, we stayed there. And obviously, right? And I mean, yeah. And so the girl comes to this girl comes to my wife and says that the lady that she's staying by told her a story how she found or she saw a whole set of ZOHAR'S outside by the trash. And because the guest was telling her about us, because she was like, hey, who's at your meal type of a thing. So she starts telling her some of our story. And then her hearing this, she says, oh, wow, earlier this week, I saw a whole set of ZOHAR'S by the trash over here, maybe even like Erev Shabbos, like right by it over there. And so she was wondering, like, maybe there could be a connection with us taking it back with us. Maybe we will want, right? Because that's like part of our story, right? That's part of my story is Zohar. And so we get this set of Zohar. We say, yeah, of course, we'll take them. There's a set of Zohar, it had Rav Ashlak, commentaries in it. It's amazing. So since then, I've been very much into, looking at the Midrashim and looking at the Chumash and looking at the Gemara and seeing where there's similarities and dissimilarities at, right? So with that being said, so Saturday morning, Shabbos now, not my birthday now, I woke up and I started reading the Zohar, and sometimes I just open it up. And so I opened it up to Bereshis because that's what I'm really into right now, the 6 days of creation. God rested on the seventh day. And so I opened it up randomly, and it's a story of Rabbi Shimon leaving the cave. It's like, whoa, what an amazing concept. Like, it's not just the fact that Rabbi Shimon brought the Zohar down, but that actually, for us to have the merit to have the conversations, the words of someone who brought the Zohar into the world, which is like the holy of the holy of the holies. It allowed us to understand the depths, the sod of the inner essence of the Torah, the blueprint of reality, everything that exists, that in our reality, Hashem used the Torah to create. So the Torah is emet, right? And the Torah is holy. And for us to have the insight to go inside of the Torah, the depth of the Torah, and to be able to understand the blueprint of reality on such a deep, intimate level, it's just unbelievable. And to be able to learn the words and to hear the words of our sages and their students, it's just unbelievable. So the story in the Zohar goes like this. It starts with a conversation between Rabbi Pinchas and Rabbi Rachumi, Ruchumi. Rabbi Ruchumi, just a background on him. Rabbi Ruchumi is like a sage. He's like a wise person, and he's known to live by the Kinneret. And so, anyways, a story about him and Rabbi Pinchas having a conversation. Rabbi Pinchas would frequently visit over there, and he would frequently visit over there, and his frequently visiting. And this one particular time he visited, he started a conversation. He had a conversation with Rabbi Ruchumi. Told him that he had this vision. Oh, and another thing, Rabbi Ruchumi is blind, right? So he's a blind man. He's an older man. You know, he's a very wise chacham. He's a very wise person. Rabbi Pinchas will come and come and spend time with him. It's interesting how we're just talking about the kol I was learning at. But anyways, but yeah, so Rabbi Pinchas would come and sit and talk with him. So in this one particular conversation, Rabbi Ruchumi told him that he had this vision that his grandson was bringing this tremendous light into this world, and his whole family was bringing this tremendous light in the world, and his son-in-law was bringing this tremendous light in the world, and all this was connected. And so what's the connection? As you probably already figured out, Rabbi Pinchas's daughter was married to Rabbi Shimon. So Rabbi Ruchumi's going on this whole thing. He's going on this whole process. And so as this whole thing happens, Rabbi Ruchumi decides he walks towards the Kinneret, and he starts to get onto this boat, right? And there's two people on this boat. You gotta realize all these different small points that the Zohar brings out obviously have deep meanings. And he said that he saw two birds flying above him, over the lake. And so Rabbi Ruchumi raised his voice, and he says, birds, birds who fly over the water, have you not seen the place of where the son of Bar Yochai? And he's asking, where's Bar Yochai? Where's he at? And so he's waiting a while, and then he says, birds, birds, bring me back an answer. So the birds flew away. They flew all the way to the middle of the Kinneret. And if you've ever seen the Kinneret, I've been at moments at the Kinneret since I've been here in Israel where the sun has been setting, or it's been scorching hot, and it's like those moments were so beautiful and so divine that's like changed my life. And I will say one funny story about myself, not a long one, but the last time I was at the Kinneret, I went to one of those water parks. And I don't know why I had so much confidence, but I had a life jacket on, and I went to one of those water things, and I thought I could just go jump in the water and just swim, man, I got out there, I started like almost drowning. Like people were looking at me like, should we help the guy? And I'm like trying to like swim for my life, and I got this life jacket on, whatever. Anyway, it worked out. I was so exhausted. After that, you have no idea. So anyways, Kinneret's an amazing place. So he says, bring me answers, right? And the birds flew away, they disappeared. And so before he departed, the two birds came back. And in the mouth of one of the birds was a letter informing him that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the son-in-law of Rabbi Pinchas, had left the cave together with his son Rabbi Eliezer. And so Rabbi Pinchas was just so full of excitement, he immediately left and went to meet with him. And when they saw each other, it was like an emotional moment, because Rabbi Shimon has put his body through so much. It's like you have like a friend that had a mission in life, and they really went after it. And on that mission, they just went on they got so many scars and so many wounds. But you knew what they did, and you saw the impact of what they did in the world. And so when you see that friend in person, you see those wounds, and you're like, wow, those are the wounds that changed the world. And so Rabbi Pinchas is now embracing Rabbi Shimon. And so Rabbi Shimon starts the discussion by giving over Torah precepts. He says to him, Rabbi Shimon opens the discussion on the precepts of the Torah, saying the precepts of the Torah were given to Israel by the Holy One, blessed be He, are all written in the Torah in general. And so he starts off with the beginning of creation, right? And this is where we're at, and this is the main point of this year, right? This is the main point of this whole conversation, is to be able to really crack open the precepts of the Torah. Because Rabbi Shimon goes on this whole time, you gotta realize this is all happening to me Shabbos morning, okay? I'm like sitting, laying in bed, early in the morning, the whole thing, right? And I'm just reading, and this is all happening. I just feel like my life is unfolding. So that experience of my life unfolding, I want to share that experience through this adventure of these 14 precepts. And they're not very long ones, right? Even though this is kind of like an introductory, so I had to give the backstory and a little bit about how I got into this whole thing. But the reality is like the precepts of this are life-changing. And it changed my life over Shabbat. And since then, I've just been reviewing it to the point now, I'm going to turn it into a book. And this book that I'm going to, God willing, with the strength of Hashem and the clarity of Hashem and the humility of Hashem, be able to bring this book out and explain the 6 days of creation. Because often, with religion, people take all the different precepts and, Adam means this, and Noah means this, and Abraham was this, and Isaac was this, and Esau was this, and Yaakov was this, Ishmael was this. Sometimes religion is kind of polarized these characters that ultimately represent different spheros that express themselves physically as human beings, right? But we don't get to that point because religion. So 6 days of creation is something that we can all agree on, right? It's something that we can all agree on. It's something that everyone agrees with, everyone knows, and we don't have to go into, denominations and outlooks. We could just literally fall in love with Hashem and see what Hashem has provided for us. So the first thing that Rabbi Shimon says, the first thing that he says, Bereshis bara Elohim, which is the first pasuk in the Torah. And he says that this is the first and foremost, most important precept in the whole Torah. He's saying Bereshis bara Elohim is a precept. And he's saying it's the most important one in the entire Torah. It's the most important fundamental thing. And understanding this precept will allow a person to fly into completely new realities. That the Torah that exists, they will actually be able to truly keep this Torah from a place of emet, and they will be able to reap all the benefits of it, and they will be able to get away from all the negative things that come along with this. So he says that this precept is called fear of Hashem, right? And he says, which is called beginning. He's saying beginning and fear of Hashem are synonymous. So what Rabbi Shimon is going to do in this process is that he's going to provide us expanded definitions, right? So we look at Bereshit and we see it as saying beginning, right? Because we went to Western secular schools, right? So Rabbi Shimon is saying, no, it's Bereshit means even much more than that. God is telling us something so deep and so profound in Bereshit that I have to come and tell you this. After burying myself in the cave for 13 years, right? And living to only be able to use my makshava, to only be able to use my thinking process and to be devoid of body consciousness, to be just a pure channel of light, right? So he's saying that the definition of beginning is synonymous with fear. Why? So he says, he brings two proofs. One proof is he brings the fear of Hashem. He says the fear of Hashem is the beginning of wisdom. It says in Tehillim 111:10. He brings another proof. He brings the fear of Hashem is the beginning of knowledge. Mishle 1, chapter 1, verse 7, right? And he says, so the whole concept of fear, it's a fear allows you to have a gateway to a connection to the beginning of creation. The beginning of all of reality starts with this idea of Bereshit, right? And this idea of Bereshit, as Rabbi Shimon is saying in his first conversation, coming out of the cave, bringing down the Zohar, that him coming out and saying this is saying that this is his first conversation, and we're saying his words, we're repeating that conversation right in 2023. And in those words, he's saying that Bereshit is fear. And fear is the beginning of knowledge. So the beginning of knowledge is the word Bereshit is giving us. It's not this dafka that it's fear, it's the beginning of knowledge, right? Well, before Bereshit, if a person never heard Bereshit, they have no wisdom of the world. They have no knowledge, they have no understanding of anything. They're only revolving on human animalistic impulses, right? So they have no knowledge of self, no understanding. And so he says, there's three types of fear, right? He says there's three types of fear. He says Yorat, Eat Parash. This is all Aramaic. Litlat, Si Terim, right? He's saying fear is divided into three types, right? And in this fear that he's talking about that's divided into three types, this fear that he had that he's saying exists in three types, that fear, he's saying two of them are baseless and one of them is true fear, right? So he's saying in order to understand this system of thought that Bereshit is bringing to the table, where it says Bereshit bara Elohim, this idea of the beginning is connected to the idea of fear. Fear is connected to the beginning, and the beginning is connected to knowledge. So fear and knowledge, fear of Hashem and wisdom are all synonymous, right? And so now we're trying to understand what fear is. So we're saying there's three types of fears. Two are baseless, one has value. One type of fear is like this. One type of fear is saying that I live every day and Hashem provides me everything. He provides me my life, he provides me my subsistence, he provides me my parnasa, he provided my wife, he's provided me everything. And if I transgress the Torah, if I break that covenant, if I separate from Hashem, I could lose everything. And I fear that. I want to keep all the things that Hashem has provided for me, I want to keep them, and I want to have this close relationship with them, and I want to love them, I want to nurture them, and I want to appreciate them. Rabbi Shimon is saying that this is fake fear, because this fear is only coming from the place of me. The fear of Hashem is only a result of me losing something that's valuable to me, right? Something that's valuable to me, I lose it, therefore I don't want that, I'm scared. That is a fear of vanity. And he said there's another type of fear. So that fear is baseless. It's not a fear of reality. If you live a life and this is for the people of the Torah, right? If you're living a life and your understanding of the Torah and the precepts of the Torah is based around the concept of you being fearful of losing things and not having things and judgment coming upon you and these types of things, that is not fear of Hashem. That is fear of you losing things that make you happy, and so therefore you fear the precepts that Hashem has given you. That is fear of vanity. If a person, second fear, if a person goes out and they fear, you know what, I want to have a place in the Olam Haba. I don't want to go to the Gehenna. I don't want to bring negative malachim around me. I only want good malachim. I want to elevate to the highest madrega. I want to connect to pure consciousness. I want to reveal the Salem Elohim, that's what's inside of me. All these different dynamics, right? All these different dynamics. That is also not fear. That is fear based off of vanity. I want to go to Gan Eden. I don't want to go to Gehinnom. I don't want to have dark malakim, I don't want to do so, I'm not going to transgress the Torah. Again, that is all about vanity. It's a result of this action that, or this possibility, or this predicament that I fear Hashem. It's the predicament. It's not Hashem. So Rabbi Shimon says the only type of real fear that exists is the fear that knowing that Hashem is everything. Hashem is everything. When I wake up in the morning and I pray, the strength to wake up in the morning is Hashem. The body that gets up is Hashem. The thought of praying in the morning comes from Hashem. The physical tefillin is an expression of Hashem. The talit is an expression of Hashem. The words in the Torah, the siddur, the table, the floor, the seats, the walls, the paint, everything is Hashem. And me knowing that everything is Hashem, when I think that I'm committing, I'm sneaky, or I'm doing something that no one's going to know about, no, Hashem's right there. He's looking at it. He's the only one that matters. What other people think don't matter. What Hashem thinks matters. This determines my eternal life. So the fear of understanding that everything that exists is from Hashem, this is the beginning of connecting to the fear that Rabbi Shimon says, if you are able to understand what the true fear is, you're going to be able to keep all of the Torah and keep it with kavana and keep it with total content. This is Rabbi Shimon. This is the person who wrote the Zohar. This is what he's saying, not a commentary on Rabbi Shimon. This is what he's saying. And so he's saying that from the level he saw, from what God showed to him, this is the MS. And the MS is that if you have true fear, that you become one with the Torah. You inherit the heavens and the earth. Bereshis bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz. You receive the heavens and the earth with true fear. Right? Right? So the question is like this. The question is like this. Rabbi Shimon says, and this is like this statement is so humongous. Rabbi Shimon says that the punishment and the whipping and the makot that a person experiences in this world is a byproduct of the evil fear. And the evil fear is the fear that convinces us that I'm praying to Hashem because of these anxieties. He's explaining anxiety. He's explaining depression. That's what he's explaining with these two concepts of evil fear. I am worried about what? What am I worried about? I'm worried about the fact that I may lose my house. I may lose my wife. I may lose my husband. Something may happen to my kids, God forbid. So I may have a bankruptcy. I may get fired from my job. I may do this. So I got to keep the Torah in order for these bad things to not happen to me. Think about when people go and see a therapist and they talk about they have anxiety. What is all this about? All of this anxiety, all this pain is about one thing: what may happen in the future. What is the basis of what Rabbi Shimon is saying? Rabbi Shimon is saying the first aspect of unhealthy fear, of evil fear, that tortures a person throughout their life is this. Is that their connection to God, their connection to reality is based around the fact that if I don't do this, everything I have, I'm going to lose. All these bad things are going to happen to me. So if I make a mistake, if I go and mess up, if I go and do these things, then I'm going to lose everything. This is how people live in a state of fear, anxiety, and limitation. Right? This is how people live in a state of fear, anxiety, and limitation. Fear, anxiety, and limitation. Because I am succumbed by evil fear. The whole thing about people, the next world, am I holy? Is this pure? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I going to be struck down if I made this a Aveira on Shabbos? This, obviously we should be machmir. Obviously we should be sensitive. Obviously we should keep everything as stringent as possible to connect to the Rabbanu Shalom. I mean, we should 100% do that, right? But the point is saying that living in a place where we're doing it only for the sake of saving ourselves from something harm is stating that my relationship with God is only based off of my connection to Him, or connection to these things that are in my life, or these things that I aspire to. That's my whole relationship with God. It's not a relationship with God that Hashem is all around me. Hashem is everything. Hashem is the fact that I have any type of thought is Hashem. My ZOHAR'S is Hashem. My Tov is Hashem. Every thought, my makshava, everything around me is Hashem. Everything is Hashem around me. And that's why I feel Hashem, because He's the only reality. So what happens when a person experiences and goes through this process of having and living the Torah from these two perspectives? They transgress the entire Torah. Every mitzvah that they're doing is in vain. Every mitzvah that they're doing is connected to the Yetzer Hara, and that's why they live in these states of anxiety. They live in these states of confusion. They live in these states of low self-esteem, because the entire spiritual experience is about them and not the greatness of God. And once you go over the Torah, Rabbi Shimon says, you are now in the frame of the cardinal sins, the 4 cardinal sins. And he says, how do we know that? The next verse says like this. The next verse says, Ve'ha'aretz hayata tovu ve'choshek al pinei tohum ve'ruach Elohim. Right? Those are the main points, but the verse continues and says, Machafes al pinei hamayim. But there's 3 words here. There's toho vuhu, choshech, and ruach. These 3 words are expressing the 3 capital punishments that a person experiences when they transgress the entire Torah. And this is the reality that they're living in. Now, when we hear these capital punishments, we think about, this whole the whole idea of like, people being put to death and there being a Sanhedrin and this whole thing, right? So those things, we don't have that today. So what are these forms of capital death? What are these forms of pain and suffering that comes along with the person that transgresses the Torah? What are these dynamics? These are the ways of living that people will have. People are living in the frame of these 4 entities. They're living in these frames. These frames, as we see, are eccentric to creation. They're part of creation. They're part of the manifestation of the physical earth, the physical life, right? So what does Rabbi Shimon says? He says, when it says tohu, he says this means without form means strangulation, right? Strangulation. And he brings a pasuk from Yeshayahu, chapter 34:11, and he brings a pasuk from Zechariah, chapter 2, verse 5, right? And so he says, so that's tohu. He says vohu means stoning and refers to the stones that are sunk in the deep, in the great deep for the purpose of punishing the wicked. So tohu vuhu means strangulation and stoning. Choshech means burning in the midst of darkness. And so he brings the pasuk from Devarim, while the mountain did burn with fire, chapter 5, verse 20. And he also brings a verse from Yirmiyah, chapter 23, 19. Those are two verses. I'm trying not to go into those verses because those verses are worlds and try to understand how he darshan those things or big concepts. So the word ruach means by slaughtering by the sword. And he brings a verse in Bereshit about the bright blade of a revolving sword. It says in Bereshit chapter 3:24. And it is also called the wind, right? So this is the punishment for whoever transgresses the precepts of the Torah. Because it appears after fear, that is called Bereshit, and includes everything. Because after the term beginning, which means, this is Rabbi Ashlag, which means fear, it is written without form and void, darkness and wind. And these are the 4 capital punishments. So this is the first precept of Rabbi Shimon. And I know it's a little daunting and it's hard. And then most of us, maybe that's why we're not living in that supernal reality that the Torah promises. That place of connection to Hashem. Maybe we've been doing all of our mitzvot and all of our Torah because we want to go to Gan Eden, we want to go to Olam Haba, we want to have our shidduch, we want to have our soulmate, we want to have parnasa, we want to have refuah, we want all this. So we do tefillah, and if we don't do these things, we're scared that we're not going to get to Gan Eden. We're not going to have parnasa. We're not going to have good health. We're not going to have good friends, good neighbors. That's why we're doing this. And we learned today that is the wrong way to keep the Torah. We keep the Torah because Hashem is everywhere. Hashem is around us. Hashem is everything. And through understanding that, we have a healthy fear of Hashem. We have a healthy fear that Hashem is around us. You know how many people have left the Torah, have went off the derek because they had an unhealthy relationship that brought them anxiety as it relates to the Torah, that they were nervous about everything that they were doing and they were worried about losing this. And if anything went wrong, they would think back and say, well, maybe I didn't have enough kavanah here and it was too much for them. And only if they knew the words of Rabbi Shimon and the words in the Zohar, they would know that this dynamic of the healthy fear of knowing that Hashem is all around us is how we inherit the heavens and the earth. This is how we inherit it. And without it, there's no way. Without it, there's no way to inherit the heavens and the earth. And in fact, if we don't have fear with Bereshit, the rest of that pasuk doesn't even apply to us. We skip to the next pasuk as it relates to the capital punishments. Tohu, choshech, ruach. Connects us to strangulation, tohu, stoning, vohu, choshech, burning, and ruach by the sword. And we go straight to that. So if we want to serve Hashem properly, and we want to bypass so much din, we can't serve Hashem out of what we're going to get out of it, and what's in it for us. We serve Hashem because Hashem is Melech, and Hashem's everywhere. And Hashem knows exactly what we need. And by doing the mitzvah, we do the mitzvah. We don't do the mitzvah because I want to get this and I want to be connected and I want to be connected to the light. You're already the light. You already one. You already here. That's the reality of the situation. That's TORAH. We have to rearrange our way of connecting to God. We have to leave the place of selfishness as a relationship to our relationship with creation, to reality. And we need to enter the world of abundance, the world of being connected to everything, the world of being one with Hashem, the one that everything I desire is part of who I am already. And it's just a process of manifesting this relationship between what's already a part of me. And so God willing, we learned a little bit and we can continue to grow. And so we'll continue on with the next the next precept, and it's a lot lighter, I'll tell you that. It's all based around love, of course, right? And so Baruch atah Adonai le'olam, amen.